Welcome into this segment of Behind the Pen presented by mostvaluablepodcast.com. If you want to listen to the full podcast, go to blogtalkradio.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Also, we're on iTunes, so check us out there as well. Thank you all for listening as always, and enjoy the show. All right, if you're listening on blogtalkradio.com/Behind the Pen, you just heard an interview I conducted with Drew Edstrom from Bulls Confidential. He's a friend of the show, and we're really happy to have him on. It's a great conversation about the Chicago Bulls. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and check out that segment. But first, you got to get through this Bears one. Leave a comment, like down below if you like what you heard, or if you didn't like what you heard, regardless. Give us some feedback. We really do appreciate you. I'm talking Chicago Bears now. And one more shout out to Drew and everybody over at Bulls Confidential. It's been a pleasure talking to him. Chicago Bulls. Now I'm talking Chicago Bears. My goodness, it's about time. I tell you what, I missed it last week. The first wave of free agency. I was out of town, and Ricky and Dave covered for me on Behind the Pen, which was awesome. They did a great job. Now it's my turn to give you my thoughts on the Chicago Bears free agency as a whole, because when they did that, only the first-tier guys signed. And, of course, the reaction was Mike Glennon, baby. Mike Glennon, the stability at the quarterback position has been solved with Glennon. Yes, Mike Glennon will be here for a while, 3 years, $45 million, or he might be gone. You never know with this organization, the way things play out. But only $18.5 million guaranteed of that $45 million, so that's nothing, guys. And the Bears have a lot of cap space. They entered a free agency this year with over $50 million that they could spend, and I think they nailed it. I think they absolutely nailed this free agency period. And you talk about that first wave of free agents that kind of went through. You know, they didn't land a Stephon Gilmore. I know they were linked. They were heavily linked, actually. AJ Boye, I talked about it on my Bears preview, free agency preview, as well as the draft combine preview episode 2 weeks ago. And Boye was on my list. I really wanted to get Boye. Difference of $500,000. I'll get into that in a second. Obviously, I'm going to break all of this down. They didn't land those two cornerbacks, high-profile guys, first-tier free agents. They also let Alshon Jeffrey Walk go to the Eagles. He signed a one-year deal. That's fine. We'll talk about that too as well. But the focus has to first be on Mike Glennon. I got to give you my thoughts on Glennon and the signing and the thinking there, because it just makes sense, guys. It just makes so much sense where the Bears are. Jay Cutler, by the way, officially cut, so no more conversation about Jay Cutler on the Chicago Bears. But if he signs somewhere, you best believe I'm going to be talking Jay Cutler, but that's fine. We're going to leave it at that for now. But Mike Glennon, the focus now is on Mike Glennon. And the Chicago Bears, I think, made a savvy move. Not really so much savvy, but a smart move to sign Mr. Stability. And I'm going to consider him Mr. Stability because that's what I see. Going into free agency, obviously the number one concern was to fill the quarterback because you had to have someone there immediately. Well, you're not going to find it in the draft. Straight up, you're not going to do that. You can't spend a number 3 pick on any of the quarterbacks projected to go in the first round because there's too many inconsistencies, right? You're not going to give it to Matt Barkley because he sucks. And you could potentially sign Hoyer, but what are you going to get out of Hoyer? You know what you're going to get out of Hoyer. So I like the way the Bears approach free agency in terms of the quarterback position, signing Mike Glennon to that $45 million contract that only $18.5 is guaranteed. And when you talk, I said stability, that's what I see. That is exactly what I see when it comes to Mike Glennon, because he hasn't really had a chance, right, in Tampa Bay, really throughout his entire career yet. Sat behind, well, he got benched for Josh McCown for whatever reason. Josh McCown, after 2013, he signs with the Bucs, the stupidest contract you can make, and got benched, which is kind of embarrassing. And then you sit behind Jameis Winston because obviously you're going to commit to him. So he hasn't had a chance yet. His ceiling is rather low, of course. What are you going to get out of Mike Glennon? He has a higher ceiling than Brian Hoyer, but it's not, what are you going to do? He can't run out of the pocket. He's a pocket passer. His strengths are the short, conservative, intermediate throws that fits Dowell Loggains' system. So I like it. And when I say he hasn't had a chance yet to thrive, this is it. Finally, like in Tampa, he played for Graciano. He sucked. That was the worst head coach probably in the history of football next to Mark Trestman. But with Glennon coming in now, he has a chance to go through a training camp, learn a system, get familiar with his players, and go through a starting quarterback's regime as if he was a starter, which he will be. The Bears are going to commit to him. So he has time, right? He's going to develop, and hopefully it's consistency, stability. I say stability because that's what I see. A guy who doesn't make too many mistakes, or at least hasn't shown that he makes too many mistakes. He hasn't thrown more than 2 touchdowns in a game, but he also hasn't thrown for more than 2 interceptions in a game. So right now, with the Bears' current situation, you're talking about what do you need at the quarterback position? A guy who can be there until you find the answer. And Mike Glennon's it. That's it. He's the guy. Safe pick, safe signing. I love it. Now, going back before in free agency when they were suggesting $15 million for Mike Glennon, everybody threw up in arms. I would have been upset too, because you can get Brian Hoyer for what, $4 or $5 million wherever he's signed in San Francisco. Matt Barkley too. Shout out Matt Barkley. He sucks though. And you have Mike Glennon now. I'm okay with it. I'm actually really happy with it, given the current situation and what he brings to the Bears and his skill set. So that was a good signing. We're good with Mike Glennon, but really, obviously, it takes more than just Mike Glennon. Gosh, I'm giving him too much credit. It takes more than Mike Glennon for the Bears to be competitive in the near future, and that's where the rest of free agency comes in. Of course, they missed out on A.J. Boye. They missed out on Stephon Gilmore. They missed out on Alshon Jeffrey. Boye deciding to go to Jacksonville, it's okay. Obviously, there are tax concerns. He's making more money. The $500,000 difference in the contract isn't really what the conversation is about. If you look at it just strictly with the difference there, there's a lot of factors that go into it. Living environment, what's best for your family. Obviously, the tax cuts over in Florida give Boye more money in the grand scheme of things, but the system may have fit better. Who knows what the thinking was there, but he just didn't decide the Bears, and that's fine. That's fine. Stephon Gilmore, they lowballed him, and Gilmore's like, all right, see ya. And that's fine. You know why it's fine? It's because the Bears had a plan. The Chicago Bears went into free agency with a plan, and that's what you want to see from your front office. It's smart. Because what happens when you're in a transition, a rebuild period, like the Chicago Bears are right now, and you spend money in free agency, you just handcuff yourself. That's when you lose. You don't win Super Bowls in free agency. You'd like to see the Bears land a splash, but that's when you lose, because you commit all this money to guaranteed contracts to players who are getting paid for past performances, and you handcuff yourself. You're screwed. Well, the Chicago Bears did this free agency period. I think they nailed it. Losing out on Alshon Jeffrey to 1 year, they were done with him. It just flat out, it seems like they just didn't want to take any more responsibility. They didn't want to work with him for another year. He signed a 1 year, $14 million deal, if I'm not mistaken, with Philadelphia. I mean, that's nothing. That's kind of petty change. So Bulls, we talk Bulls, by the way, with Drew. You should check that out. But Bears, you don't commit the money to Alshon. I mean, that's saying something. I guess they were just done with him, and they didn't want to take the risk because he's hurt, and obviously he had that suspension. So they were just done. And Alshon Jeffrey will most likely prove to the Bears that they missed out on something if he can stay on the field, because he's a top caliber wide receiver. He's definitely number one in the league, for sure. He's got that skill set. But we don't have to talk about that because it's in the past. It's done now. The Chicago Bears are moving forward. Let's look at how they approach day two, or the second tier free agents, because this is where they made their money. You want to talk about what they needed, and I think they did a great job of setting themselves up in the draft for whatever they want to do. They are definitely in a better position going into the draft this year than they were last year, because last year you really had to rely on the draft to find consistency on the field immediately. Now you can stockpile depth, and you can transition a little easier now because you can have a chance to develop these players. You're not putting them in situations where you expect them to produce. You have players who've been there now. And I say been there now because they signed Marcus Cooper, Prince Amukamara, and Quentin Demps in the secondary. That is huge. That is huge, not because they're super talented secondary pieces. It's because you provide consistency now. You have experience. You have depth. How many times have we seen it last season where you didn't know the name of the guys playing on the field because they had no depth? They're playing undrafted free agents. They're playing 7th-round draft picks, what have you, 4th-round picks who just didn't pan out, guys like Deion Bush sitting on the bench. Now they have something. They have something cooking. Their defense is what's going to get them back to relevancy before anything else. And they've done a really good job, in my opinion, to this point in rebuilding that defense to make them at least top 10 potentially. And that's not a crazy enough claim to make. And I'm excited. Quentin Demps, what he provides, signing a 3-year deal, $13.5 million and $5 million guaranteed. You kidding me? He's at 31. That's a guy who can plug into that secondary, especially in the safety position. And it reminds me, if you're going to say Antrell Roll, no, because Antrell Roll was terrible. Quentin Demps brings something, especially with 3 years. He's still got life left in his game. He's a guy back there who knows where he's supposed to be on the field. He's going to help these young secondary pieces in the safeties, free safety, strong safety positions to get better. And that's what you need at this point. Guys to learn from example, especially from guys who've been there before. Quentin Demps, love the signing. Such a smart signing. When I go over to Prince Amukamara now, I talked about him in that podcast a couple weeks ago, right? And I said, he didn't win the job out of Jacksonville right away, out of training camp, but provided at least some value in terms of depth. He played, I believe, in 14 games of the 16. So he was on the field, right? That's what you like to see. He didn't create any turnovers last season, which is concerning. The Bears need to increase that category in takeaways on the defensive end. But Amukamara is a guy who's been there before, of course. He has experience at the position. He's not a guy where you can plug him in, right? And he's going to be a guy who takes away one half of the field on the defensive end. That's more like a Stephon Gilmore. Like if they were able to bring in Gilmore, then you'd say, yes, yeah, baby, half the field is covered. But no, Amukamara is probably going to compete with Tracy Porter and even Marcus Cooper, a guy that the Bears signed in free agency, another smart signing. So I really like that. Amukamara on a one-year deal, $7 million, you can't lose. That's a low-risk signing. You know what you're going to get out of him. And if he becomes a death piece, then so be it. That's a positive. Now on to Marcus Cooper. When you look at him, traded from the Chiefs over to Arizona, he wasn't a starter throughout his tenure in Kansas City, eventually started making appearances with the Cardinals on the field, and he did well. Started creating turnovers for himself, made a name for himself in Arizona. Now he's over in Chicago, and he's going to also compete for a cornerback position. And with the Bears right now, their situation at cornerback, who do you have faith in? Is Kyle Fuller going to be ready to play? I think he's talented. Yes, absolutely has talent, but he's got to prove it on the field. He hasn't been there yet since having that knee problem. So there are questions about Kyle Fuller's production. Are you going to rely on Tracy Porter, aging cornerback? He was pretty solid. Honestly, probably one of the more solid signings Ryan Pace has ever had during his 2 years in Chicago. Tracy Porter, you know what you're going to get out of him. When you have other competition pieces there, where you're going to rely on somebody else, that'll be fun to at least keep an eye on. Bryce Callahan, I think, in my opinion, is the most talented secondary piece on the roster. The problem is he always gets hurt. And that sucks because he turned into a very valuable cover corner, as well as a guy who comes in the nickel package and fits the scheme of what Vic Fangio wants to do. So then now and Crayvon LeBlanc, I'm not sure if I already mentioned him, undersized corner, undrafted free agent, got from New England's practice squad. He's a guy to keep an eye on. He played pretty much all season long there for the Bears, but there's competition. There's talent now. Well, there's talent in the secondary. Maybe not guys who flash, jump off the page at you, but that'll help, especially with this front seven being bolstered, we assume at least, going into the draft, potentially with the Jonathan Allen going third. I know he's got the arthritis problem, but Jonathan Allen's a guy you may not want to pass up and bolster that front seven, especially on the line. So this is all positives, guys. Especially, I really, really like what Ryan Pace did in terms of addressing the needs in the secondary with Cooper, Demps, and Amukamara. So grade A stuff. And Jonathan Banks, by the way. I have to throw in Jonathan Banks in there. He signed a one-year deal, just under $1 million. So depth. You got to have guys who can stay on the field. You got to have capable backups, right? That's how you get better. You don't invest all this money in free agency because you just get handcuffed. Then you screw yourself in the future, and that's what halt rebuilds. And that's just straight up, period, end of story. So what do we cover? Glennon. We covered the secondary. Now let's move on to the tight end position. Deion Sims. How about this? $18 million, 3 years. I love it. 26 years old, out of Miami. He was a backup there for the Dolphins. But you look at it, you combine him with a Zach Miller now, Deion Sims, and of course Daniel Brown. How about it? That looks pretty good. I think the tight end position is pretty solid right now. Sims can really help you out on the run and stay on the field. And that's what you love to see. Savvy signings who stay on the field. And with this draft class, of course you have to mention it. It's loaded. You know the Bears are going to draft tight end. And whenever they do, whatever round they get him, it's going to be a good piece. A piece that they can use, and it's going to be valuable. So you bolster that position. Obviously, you need it. So that's awesome. I mean, another positive thing. Yeah, I mean, just like, yes. Moving on. Of course, you lost Alshon Jeffrey, the one-year deal. Like I said, it was just time, I guess. The Bears just didn't want to invest any more of their resources into Alshon Jeffrey. Of course, he's going to be considered a number one receiver in the league because he deserves to be so. But they're moving on. And the Bears really have a problem there at wide receiver because Kevin White gets hurt. I think he's going to be a valuable piece. He's just got to stay healthy. I think he has the talent to become at least a really solid slot receiver or second receiver on that Chicago Bears front. But I don't think he's going to be a one. And I don't think they have a number one receiver on their roster right now. Cam Meredith is very good, very talented, but he's not a number one. So do you really need a number one receiver to compete in the NFL? That's probably one of the more overrated positions. I guess, in my opinion, Of course, the Des Bryant, the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, those guys are really nice to have on your team because you can just throw it up to them and they usually make a play. But, it's going to be a transition process for the Bears at that position right now. They addressed it by signing Marcus Wheaton from Pittsburgh on a 2-year contract. I like it. And they also brought in Kendall Wright out of Tennessee on a 1-year deal. I also like it, right? They both have experience. Wheaton coming off a really injury-plagued season last year in Pittsburgh. We didn't see much of him at all. But he's got speed. He can do stuff for you in the special teams game. He's a punt returner, kick returner. That's what the Bears obviously need. Remember, they were running with Eddie Royal, who acted as a consistent piece there in the special teams unit for the Bears last year. So I like it. I like Kendall Wright, and I like the addition of Marcus Wheaton. I think they both have talent. Kendall Wright's pretty consistent. He's got some size. I think he makes some plays. He's solid. He's a solid. These are solid signings, guys who add to the depth, and it makes them competitive. And I think having a guy in Mike Glennon to get the ball to them, to be, like I said, straight pocket passer, intermediate conservative throws, not too successful on the deep ball. But you have a guy who can stretch the field in Kevin White and even Marcus Wheaton. But this is safe. These are safe signings, stable signings, guys to contribute to the depth and get them to where they hopefully want to be. Are they going to be competitive next year? Maybe. I think they could be. Based on their defense. Straight up, their defense could be what carries them for a long time next year, and we got to see how they approach this draft. With a top 3/top 4 picks in every other round, that's going to be huge. So let's see how the Bears approach that moving forward. But still, we're going to keep it on this free agency conversation because it's fun. I'm really enjoying it. Hopefully you're enjoying it here on Behind the Pen. If you're on YouTube, again, guys, thank you so much for listening. Drop a like and a comment down below if you could. Tom Compton, tackle from Atlanta, signed a 1-year deal, and this just adds to the depth. And I really like where this offensive line is going, where it's shaping up to be. Not sure how they're going to use Hronis Grasu, probably as a backup, and I think they should keep Cody Whitehair as a center. He's a Pro Bowler. Pro Bowl center in his first year, drafted as a guard, transitions to center, and just kills it. And, of course, you have Kyle Long coming off those injuries. Man, when he break his ankle or his shin, like a high ankle injury he had last year, that was ugly. Hopefully he comes back okay. And, of course, Josh Sitton. He was huge. Huge signing for the Bears. So that interior offensive line is probably one of the most efficient in football. You have Jordan Howard behind you as well, one of the best running backs in the game, especially rookie. Oh, my gosh. The second leading rusher in the league? You kidding me? It's rookie year. Didn't even play in the first 4 games. Jordan Howard's unreal. So slowly, guys, it's starting to take shape. This transition process is going to be coming to fruition here in a minute, and we'll see what happens to Ryan Pace and John Fox. Ryan Pace is probably going to be safe for a while, but John Fox may be on the hot seat with another bad season. Could say see you later because you can't just have what happened this year again. So, and I don't think that's going to happen. But Tom Compton, back to that, adds to the depth of the offensive line, and you need it. You need it. We saw what happened last year when guys went down. And Eric Kush, again, another conservative effort from him. We saw him on Hard Knocks with the Rams. He's a good dude. At least what we've seen on that show. I mean, he showed that he was a good dude, and he played very well. Played hard as a backup last year. That's awesome. Ted Larson, these backups, you have depth. You like it. Depth is what you need, and this is what the Bears are doing in free agency, and that's how you approach free agency, especially with the position that they're in today. So we got almost everything covered here. Christian Jones signed again, a nice little backup piece, an inside linebacker. He'll be back. Bears are bringing back Connor Barth. I mean, a kicker or whatever. They're a dime a dozen. You can bring in whoever, and it really doesn't matter. So that covers that. We don't have to spend too much time there. But yeah, overall, this offense is starting to take shape. The defense, I'm very excited about. They helped bolster their secondary in free agency. I think Ryan Pace nailed it. I think he nailed it. It sucks seeing Stephon Gilmore and AJ Boye go elsewhere, especially in the difference of money that was put on the table from the Bears compared to other teams. But whatever, it is what it is. Alshon Jeffrey's probably the toughest one to watch, and I think I saw something saying that the Bears haven't re-signed a high draft pick or some of that sort, first-round draft pick since 2007. Yeah, is it Kyle Long is the only one that they re-signed? So I don't know. So I might be wrong on that stat, but that's just kind of telling. And like I said, it does kind of suck watching Alshon Jeffrey walk, but it is what it is. They didn't want to waste any more time with him. He is a number 1 receiver, but it's over. It's over and done with. And so is the Jay Cutler era, which I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a little upset, a little heartbroken by it. I love Jay Cutler, guys. Like, he's just such an interesting fella. He's just, I mean, he comes off as such a prick, and I'm sure he is a prick. And I remember reading a story. I forgot about all of it. It was a great story showing the timeline that is Jay Cutler in Chicago. I totally forgot about the don't care story when he was in the bathroom or something. He was, I guess, hammered. And a dude walks into the urinal next to you. He's like, "Oh, hey, you're Jay Cutler. I'm a huge fan." He goes, So, I mean, man, what a guy. Anyway, I can go on about Jay Cutler all the time, all day. I'm not going to keep you here. I'm sure you guys are going to give me some hate for that, but whatever. It's cool. It's all good. But that was my Chicago Bears conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. You guys should give me your opinions on what you think about the way they approach free agency. You should also let me know how the Bears are doing in terms of their transition process, their rebuild process, because I think it's starting to come along. I think we're going to see some tremendous strides forward here in year 3 of Pace and Fox. So it'll be interesting. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought about this show. Leave a like if you could. If you haven't, please check out the interview I had with Bulls Confidential writer Drew Edstrom. It was an awesome conversation. Let us know what you think about that as well. Again, guys, free agency conversation, Chicago Bears. The draft is coming up soon. So how do you think the Bears did entering the draft, approaching the draft, if they put themselves in a good position? Because I think they did. Once again, guys, you're the best. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a presentation of Most Valuable Podcast. This is Behind the Pen. And of course, we will see you all next time. Thank you guys for sticking around for this segment of Behind the Pen. If you want more Most Valuable Podcast content, click on the video up above, because I don't know why you wouldn't want to keep listening to our voices every day. But again, guys, thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate you.